Welcome everybody. We're in a new location. It's almost like we kind of transported.
Yeah.
Thanks for lending us your office, Laura.
Welcome. Always happy to have the podcasters here.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, we have been listening to you, your requests for episodes, content, and one of the ones that keeps coming up is pregnancy. Perinatal, fertility, all that stuff. And we thought, you know what? This is one that Andrew probably shouldn't be the lead on for obvious reasons. But also, we have two dietitians in our team that are recent moms. And so we thought, who better than dietitians that are they themselves also moms to give us a little bit of lessons when it comes to all things peri-preg. And then we all got our heads together and we realized that it's a massive topic. Mm-hmm. So for our sanity and your ears, today we are talking pre-pregnancy.
Yes. Yeah.
Fertility.
Maximizing fertility, setting it up so that we can maximize chances of healthy baby and healthy pregnancy. Well, first, why don't we introduce you two? So, Laura, we stole your office. You go first. Tell us and the listeners a little bit about you.
Awesome. Well, hi, I'm Laura. I'm one of the dietitians here in the North Hills office. Been with Case Pacific for a few years now. Like Andrew said, I am a new mom. I have a baby boy. He is 9 months old. Nuts as can be, but we love him. And it's been such an amazing journey becoming a mom and, even learning more about fertility and pregnancy, nutrition. It's been a wonderful journey. I've enjoyed it.
You start to realize why people like coaches, right? Because they've had the experience. Mm-hmm. You're a really knowledgeable practitioner and you worked with how many women with their pregnancy beforehand. Oh, yeah. But then you get this extra real-time experience. It just always makes you a little bit more effective, right?
For sure.
Absolutely. Erin, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. My name's Erin. I'm also here in the North Hills office. And much like Laura, I'm a new mom. So our sons are 2 weeks apart.
I think, yeah.
Literally 2 weeks apart.
August 10th for me,
25th.
25th for you,
yeah.
Something in the water at the North Hills office.
Yeah, there's something. So I'm excited to have this powwow with you because we haven't gotten to sync up on this stuff yet. So this is like crossing off a couple boxes. But
it's doubling up as mom time?
Yeah. Yes, essentially. I'm excited to talk about this. Obviously, with my work and with my passion in nutrition, applying all this stuff to my pre-pregnancy journey and pregnancy, I'm learning a lot on the job, and some things that I thought I knew about fertility are a little bit surprising. So I'm excited to dig into this.
Fantastic.
Awesome. And I'm not a mom.
But you're welcome here.
But I work with so many people around trying to optimize their nutrition for fertility. And I know that there's just like a lot of pressure and a lot of stress to do it perfectly. And so I'm really excited to learn from 2 moms who have actually done it and who are dietitians to hopefully like ease some of that stress and also just give you some really evidence-based information. So really exciting.
I love it. And this is also a topic for you that you've taken a personal interest in, not just, I guess I should say a personal and a professional interest in.
Yeah.
I'll say it this way. You contributed to the book stack,
yes.
right? The mom book stack that's in front of us that we can always put the names and titles and links and show notes. But it's to say that this is an area that I've seen you do continuing education in and your time with Case. And it's definitely with you running the Robinson location. Lot of moms out there. That's a millennial haven. So you're definitely dealing with this population a lot.
I love women's health and, pregnancy, fertility, postpartum is something that a lot of women go through. And so there's also just like not a ton of guidance on, especially like what you can do from a diet and a lifestyle perspective. So I'm excited for this.
Beautiful. So like a true guy in the pregnancy process, I got us started. Now you guys do the rest. Where are we going?
Well, I know we kind of talked maybe like just some of those like overarching ideas of like kind of just like making a commitment to like the effort, but like do one of you want to kind of speak to kind of some more general pregnancy or fertility nutrition advice for a new mom or a person who's trying to get pregnant?
Sure. You want to start?
Yeah. So let's start with we were talking a lot about the nutritional bank.
Yeah.
I like your concept of the nutritional bank, and I guess it depends. It doesn't matter where you are in the planning process. If you are thinking you want to get pregnant 6 weeks out, 12 months out, wherever the case may be, like you just
Tomorrow.
said, yeah, like tomorrow. I think what you said, Devin, like commit to making an effort. It doesn't have to be like this perfectionistic approach. And I think if you just nail down the foundations first, like, am I eating enough? Yeah. Am I drinking enough water? What are my stress levels like? I think assessing yourself from a foundational level before you go down the rabbit hole of Google, I think that's the place to start, because this stuff is kind of stressful when you go Googling, Dr.
Yeah.
Googling, you know?
Absolutely, and you have to look to it what makes the most impact, right? So
Yeah.
if you're looking at fertility in general, and I mean you can make it even broader of saying health in general, right?
Mhm.
How many clients do we have that, you know, we live in a diet centric society? How many females come in that, oh yeah, I'm just trying to lose weight. I've been trying to lose weight all these years, and they've been eating in a caloric deficit.
Mhm.
Their nutritional bank is not ideal, right? So we aren't getting in the nutrients we need on a daily basis, let alone the calories or energy we need, let alone the macronutrients, the protein, the carbs, the fats on a daily basis that their bodies aren't set up to sit there
For
and
success.
say, yeah, let me procreate real quick.
Yeah.
This is a safe place to have a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to look at those basics first, and you know, having an important emphasis in yes, food matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a disconnect in our culture that says what we eat affects our health and our fertility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned. Like, what are the kind of things that we can do to have the largest outsized impact? Because I see a lot of my clients, not just those that are going through fertility or pregnancy, they are kind of overly focused on the minutia often.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, there's the majors, there's, you know, getting enough calories, getting enough protein, staying active, managing stress, and then there's the minors, which is, you know, the phytonutrients and these like little active compounds and polyphenols we could be focusing on. And say, don't major in the minors. Like, we really need to focus on the most highest level priorities first. So what would you say are some of those highest priorities in terms of a healthy pregnancy, preparing for one?
So we talk a lot about nutrient dense foods, and I always like to start with, am I getting enough protein? Am I getting enough protein to support myself? Am I getting enough protein to support a placenta, an egg implants? Like, I think starting with the protein, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would even go a little bit broader to say, am I intaking enough calories? And you kind of said it, the major and minors. I always picture it in my brain as this pyramid of what matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the bases. Am I getting enough calories? You ask somebody,
It's
what's
the
a
lowest
calorie?
hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's the lowest hanging fruit. And you ask somebody, what's a calorie? And not many people can sit there and define it, but yet we're scared of it in our society. Okay, am I getting enough energy in? And then also that level up is, where's that energy coming from? Is it coming from protein? Is it coming from carbohydrates?
Mm-hmm.
Is it coming from fats? What's the ratio between the three?
Yeah.
And then also it's this idea too, is like, what's the quality of that food? Are my carbs coming from highly processed, refined grains, and that's the only thing I'm snacking on throughout the day? Or am I getting some slow digesting carbohydrates from fruits or grains, or, you know, a little less processed foods? And it's okay. I've got a picture of pizza hanging in my office, folks. Don't jump down my throat saying, oh God, this dietitian only eats quinoa. But it's this idea of, look at that overarching quality, and, you know, like you said, is making the effort. This doesn't have to be perfection. This doesn't have to be 100% of your intake being perfectly calculated calories and macros, but it's looking at this like, let's give it an 85-90%, right? Especially when we're dealing with maybe some fertility challenges, and we want to just set ourselves up for success. I would say those are the two basic starting points that I focus on.
Calories and protein. Hallelujah. I feel like we spent a lot of time just kind of trying to not go over our calorie goal. And now it's like, okay, now let's focus on a more of an abundance mindset. Let's make sure that we're getting enough.
Oh, I love that.
And one of the things I always like to just kind of clarify when we're talking about fertility nutrition, what is fertility nutrition? I always think about it as, it can improve your time to conception, it can shorten that time to pregnancy, and it can also improve your outcomes with IVF. So this is a big deal, right? Like, it's so powerful, the power of nutrition when it comes to fertility. What else did I want to mention? Oh, ovulatory fertility, I think, is really crucial to zoom in on. So when we're talking about improving your fertility through nutrition, we're really talking about your ovulatory fertility. That is the type of fertility or infertility that can be impacted by nutrition, because we know that things like blocked fallopian tubes can't really be optimized through nutrition. You really do need to see a professional, an OBGYN about that and try to address that there. But there really is so much that we can do through nutrition, which I'm excited to talk about. So, okay, so we talked about the majors, calories and protein. What are some other things that we should be considering if we're talking about fertility?
So healthful blood sugar management. I think any woman, any human being should be keeping that in mind. Yeah, blood sugar management comes to mind, especially if you're thinking of ovulatory and egg health.
Yeah.
Sperm health too. Can't forget that's another part of the topic we'll dive into in a bit. That's the second part of it.
I would say it's definitely looking at your body in a whole health manner, right? Is setting yourself up for that healthy lifestyle, right? It's not just food, it's not just what you're sipping on throughout the day, right? But it is this bigger picture of health that like we talk about every day to all of our clients, right? But it's this idea of specifically for fertility. I mean, yes, your body going through pregnancy, you're constantly at a deficit, right? So pre-pregnancy, working on fertility, you have to think of it as you're just saving up, right? It is constantly this idea of let's bank a lot of nutrition. And a lot of that's geared towards that micronutrient, right? So we talked about calories, we talked about macronutrients, the big pieces, right? Micro is that smaller, that's your iron, that's your calcium. Those are the little things that do a lot of stuff in the body, but don't get as much of a reputation, I would say. So that would be that next portion, is really making sure we're building our stores of that, which, hey, yeah, let's take a prenatal, right? Let's jump on board, take that sooner rather than later. Don't become pregnant and then say, oh, hey, better get one of these.
Yeah.
We know.
It's called prenatal.
Prenatal for a reason, right? Before. And ideally, a good chunk of time before, because like I said, you're building up this savings account. And having that an adequate nutritional bank of these micronutrients, you're going to improve egg health. You're going to regulate your menstrual cycle. You support your hormone balance. It will help a secure implantation of embryo. We're also looking at reducing pregnancy complications down the line. We're also looking at less of a risk of postpartum nutrient depletion. And then also, I mean, hey, we'll get into first trimester food aversions and nausea, but you also know that there is a buffer in case that happens, so you don't have to really freak out then.
Yeah, it's truly like the proactive model of healthcare, which is what we do as dietitians.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like pre-pleating. Like you think of like repleting postpartum, like repleting the stuff that you lost. We're kind of like pre-feeding, so to speak.
Did you just make up that word? I love
did.
that.
I think I'm going to use that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that we have you nice and pre-pleated,
We're ready.
Okay, so like talking about micronutrients, and I want to circle back, put a pin in that blood sugar because I want to talk about that again.
Sure.
But what are some of the micronutrients that are most important in fertility conception?
Oh God, I mean all of them, but
Iron,
This is always so hard for me to answer. It's like all of them.
Folate, B12, iron, vitamin D.
Which you can get these checked.
Choline.
Yeah, which like are easy enough to get. Like some of them are easy enough to get like checked to see where you're falling.
Sure, but then also not all forms are created equal. Not all prenatals are created equal, right? There is different forms of folate, folic acid. There is a mechanism in our body that has to activate the folate and also B12, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's also a lot of different forms in prenatal vitamins, and I mean absolutely looking at the quality of one is very important. And I know you like to talk on methylating things, so take us away.
Yeah, the supplement nerdisms. Yeah, when you look at the micronutrients, right, I think one of the things I love, just to kind of reflect back to what I'm hearing all of you talk about, is it almost feels like we have a tendency in our culture to say, what else should I be doing? And the answer usually is what you're currently doing, but better. So people are looking to do more, and you shouldn't be doing more, you should be doing better, right? And that's, people are always looking for that quick hack, that quick thing. And yes, micronutrients are important, but the other thing I always like to remind people is micronutrients are coenzymes and cofactors for natural metabolism, right? B6, B12, those two things help your body convert folic acid into methyl tetrahydrofolate, right? And so these micronutrients play a game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
I was gonna say that's a very long word.
That's the last time I say that one because I'm gonna trip over it at some point. But those, we start to realize that these micronutrients are basically little things that, like in a pinball machine, allow the ball to bounce its way, right? They're little teeny nudges in a cascade. The reason that's so important is because it's not a more is better conversation. It's a do you have enough conversation. And so when we think about supplements, having a prenatal is a great baseline. I always call it an insurance policy. It guarantees that minimum blanket coverage. If you're
it's
eating,
like your pension.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's that baseline, right? It's that. I love your nutritional bank. You're just like, you're on the finance game. I'm proud of you. I like that. You're talking money, man. A bunch of guys are going to tune into this and be excited about it. You're making this interesting.
All of a sudden, we're finance bros.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say we're going to end up with some accidental finance bros on this podcast. But,
Welcome.
yeah, but
We'll get to sperm health.
Yeah, we will. Promise.
We will.
We'll talk about some men's fertility in a little bit. Again, it'll be a very small contribution, like we are to this entire process, but you know, it'll be the appropriate ratio. But with micronutrients, when we're thinking about it, it's we want to make sure there's enough. If you're eating really well, most of those things are covered. But then from there, it is a good thing to supplement. But if you're going to supplement, we want to ensure that you're actually getting it. And that's where things like we started supplementing folic acid because folate helps with basically prevent neural tube defects. It's an important part of the brain development in the child. But there's like a large percentage of the population that have an inhibition of the MTHFR reductase enzyme. So that is the thing that actually converts it into and turns it into usable folate. And so instead of giving you the one that has to whisper down the lane, just give you the end product. Same thing with B12. Most common one out there is cyanocobalamin, which someone on Joe Rogan a couple months ago said it was toxin and poison.
I've gotten 37 million questions.
It's not cyanide. You're fine. It's okay. It's kind of like when people are afraid of chlorine because it's in a pool and then you realize that it's half of table salt. Yeah, that same thing. Cyanocobalamin, you're going to be fine, I promise.
Sodium chloride.
Yeah, wait, what? But the cyanocobalamin does not convert very well in our stomach. The intrinsic factor in our stomach doesn't do its job. So it's supposed to get converted to methylcobalamin. Keep hearing these methyl groups, which is why you said I'm a methylating nerd, but
he likes the methylation.
Why not just give methylcobalamin? And so when we look at the supplements we're trying to give, it should be the afterthought anyway, but if we're going to give you a support, we might as well give you the best one. And so I love your pyramid thought of like adequate nutrition as a baseline, right? Those core calories, and then making sure you got your macros, and then make sure the micros are present. But if you're someone that swears that there's got to be this one thing that you're missing, and you're grasping at supplements and micronutrients and megadosing things, that's not likely the core issue. And to your point, if you're eating well and sleeping well and de-stressing well and moving well, you're giving your body all these signs that says you're safe. Your body is a biologic organism that genetically and instinctively knows what it's doing. And it's very arrogant of us as physicians and practitioners and wellness people to think we can outsmart thousands of years of biology. It's like, put your body in a good place, make sure it feels safe, and then calm the F down and let it do its job. And to be fair, so many people come in here like white knuckling the desk, like, what can I do? What pill can I take?
Yeah.
There's got to be an herb. Supplements aren't meant to activate. They're meant to support. Nutrition is not meant to. There's nothing out there that activates your ability to be pregnant. Our interventions support a natural process that will happen if your body feels like it's safe to do so. And being nutritionally pre-pleated, right, is going to be a marker that says you're okay. There's adequate energy. We're not in a drought. Having adequate fluid and adequate sleep. Having a bank of micronutrients and glycogen stores. We are not starving. We're not in danger. But then you've got to make sure that if you live a stressful job, that you come down and wind down. Because if you're living in that grind, you're running from a tiger every day, your body's going to say, not a great time to get pregnant, nor is it a great time to carry an infant. We're gonna negatively affect ourselves. We've survived as a species to be 8 billion strong because our body knows when it's a safe time to do it. And so you guys are talking about such important nutrition stuff, but it's support, it's safety. It's not this like crazy life hack. And I say all that hoping that the listeners get some almost like an exhale from what we're talking about. That's why I wanted to bring all of you on and give you a chance to really talk, is because I think we put so much pressure on this topic. Right, like, and I can only imagine as women how you feel in this society, and I'd love it if you would talk a little bit about that, because it's all from from my side of the situation. I look at it and go, we're putting all this pressure on you to like do something that you feel like you need to be perfect at yet again.
Oh, and by the way, relax, Dory.
Yeah, but like you should, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sitting here mansplaining. Like, you should just relax. Like your body, you're gonna work like 40 plus hours. You're gonna juggle all the things and all the stuff, and then like you also need to just like chill the heck out and like let your body do what it does. And it's just such a complex thing. But I'm hoping that we can give women permission to recognize that they don't need to be micromanaging micronutrients. They don't need to be obsessing. It's like, let this be a supportive baseline, and then take a deep breath, because we were doing this. Pregnancy success rates were better before we started getting involved, as a way to think about it to a certain extent. So can each of you talk a little bit about your experience of some of the pressures? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I mean, there's definitely, I think, a lot of pressure as a female is, when the time comes, you and your loved one, spouse, whatever, are trying to have a child and start a family. I mean, the pressure is kind of high, because I think as teen females, and I'm sure some listeners are going to kind of feel this way as well, we've been told since like the moment we were 12, like, oh my God, don't get pregnant. You have to like, watch out. This is such an easy thing to happen. And then we get to our like late 20s, 30s. Some people are getting pregnant at 40, right? And all of a sudden it didn't happen. And what's wrong with me, right?
We've been conditioned to be like,
immediately it happens.
Yeah.
And being on birth control for how many years, right? Our bodies come off of it, and our cycles are like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Isn't that insane? That's always one of the things that I've found fascinating, is our generation of female was put on birth control at 12 years old.
Yeah.
And then at 30, we've got the highest incidence of PCOS and endometriosis we've ever seen. We have a generation of women that have been on hormone replacement therapy their entire lives, and we act like that's weird. Like,
why aren't they ovulating perfectly?
Yeah. Could you imagine if we just put all teen boys on testosterone?
Yeah.
And we'd be like, wait, why is their sperm count 0? It's just, like you said, it is. There's so many pieces. I do want to say, and I want to be conscious of the listeners here, one of the things that when I talk about the hope that we can give some people some exhale, is I'd also want to balance it and make sure we're not making people feel hopeless, which is to say there are women that are having fertility issues, right? And so they're doing the nutrition thing, they're doing the sleep thing, and it's still a struggle for one reason or another. And so I did want to dig into a little bit of the IVF side of things and what we can do nutritionally to support that as well, if now's a good time to dig into that.
Absolutely. Well, so when I think about optimizing your outcomes for IVF, especially from a fertility standpoint, a lot of what we're talking about for general fertility nutrition is going to go hand in hand with our recommendations for IVF. So anything that we're going to be doing to help optimize you for IVF is also going to be helpful for natural conception, which is really helpful, right? We don't have to necessarily define, if you're doing IVF, you should be doing this, and if you're not, you should be doing something else from a nutrition standpoint.
But how can I not gain the 10 pounds?
During this
during the IVF, right? I get that all the time. Women have an IVF experience, they gain weight, which, side note, that's why the nutrition bank is such an important place to start with. IVF coerces a nutrition bank, but it's like, but I don't want to gain the weight. It's like, that's your body preparing for pregnancy. It's making you more fertile. We've conditioned women to think lighter means more fertile. And that's what all of you have been speaking to, is lighter is not increased fertility. At times your body needs those stores. And while there may be women whose lifestyle has their body in a place that isn't ideal, it's not likely their weight that's actually the problem, right? They fix the lifestyle, the weight may go down as a side effect, but the lifestyle interventions are what mattered, not the scale. And the opposite is true. You have women that, again, they need to actually gain weight to improve that sensitivity, to tell their body that's okay.
Wow. I feel like now might be a good time to talk about weight and fertility because
Yes.
this is a big hot button topic.
So Devon, I want to lose 50 pounds so that I can get pregnant. Not me specifically, but you know,
Not you?
Good
yeah,
luck with that, though.
I'm Andrea. Yeah, I'm the client Andrea across your desk.
Oh, man.
I have to lose all this weight.
So every situation is a little bit different, right? I will say that ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, do recommend trying to achieve a healthy weight before becoming pregnant. And that's like a big asterisk because, like, what is a healthy
What
weight?
does that mean?
What is
Yes.
Such a tightrope to
So
walk.
when they're talking about it, what they really mean is a healthy BMI. But we know that there are so much out there when it comes to BMI that it's just not really representative of true health. And when I'm talking about a healthy weight, I'm talking about a healthy weight for you. And so I'm also looking at your metabolic health. So not just looking at that number on the scale, but I'm looking at like your insulin levels, your fasting blood sugar. I know you put a pin in, healthy blood sugars for fertility, conception, and pregnancy. That is one of the biggest things that I look at, especially, we know there are increasing rates of PCOS, and that can be a big hindrance to conception. And so while, again, ACOG does recommend trying to achieve a healthy weight for pregnancy, based on the data that we have about, age and fertility versus weight and fertility and the risk factors associated, I typically recommend that you don't try to achieve your goal weight before trying to conceive. I would start trying to conceive as early as possible because of those age-related risks to kind of conception as opposed to the weight-related. Does that make sense?
I like to say,
Yes.
live like the healthiest you, and if the healthier you's lighter, that'll naturally take place as a side effect.
Absolutely.
And so it goes back to the idea of like, we've got to nourish you, we've got to prepare you to be pregnant, and we've got to build up that bank that you two talk about.
Yeah.
But sometimes building up that bank does still create weight loss in individuals that have that.
Yeah.
And that's usually a sign that lifestyle habits were very rudimentary or even non-existent. And so you're going to see that. But you said it so perfectly. There are going to be women that, based on BMI charts or even body composition, it might be a recommendation for better health to be lighter. But when faced with an attempt to try and get pregnant, the idea is like, you can't starve yourself skinny and then have high fertility. And so you're going to sacrifice one to get the other. And so you either need to work on a lifestyle that's going to change your reality over the course of year or years, which that can be really hard news to hear if you're hearing that ticking time bomb in the back end of, no, this has to be done now, which I think is why that happens so much. It's this kind of collision from both sides. I only have so many years left. I don't have the time to do it right. So I need to lose it fast and get fertility and put me on Ozempic. And now all of a sudden they're juggling all these things. And are we actually making you more fertile by doing all this? And sometimes the answer is no.
Right. And I don't mean to discount the risks associated with, obesity and pregnancy. They're definitely there.
Of course.
I'm not meaning to just like pretend like those don't exist. It's worth noting that a weight loss of 5 to 10% in individuals that are overweight can often be enough to jumpstart fertility.
And sorry to cut you off, but I was going to say, and with that 5 to 10% weight reduction, is that coming from a starvation diet or over exercising or controlling my food and just watching calories and eating 1,200 calories a day? Or is it coming from, because I think by my tone you kind of understand what I'm getting at. Or is it coming from, hey, I look at adequately feeding my body. I look at my nourishing meals where, am I having a Belvita breakfast sandwich bar for breakfast and then snacking all day long? Or am I getting a breakfast that actually is full of protein and fiber-rich carbohydrates and healthy fats? What is actually the change that I've made to lead to that weight loss? Oftentimes, like Andrew said, it's the changes that we're making, and as a result, our body loses weight.
Absolutely. If you take anything away from this today, it's that starvation diets decrease fertility. Those
bold
your
underline.
body is not safe if it's starving.
Absolutely.
So conceiving, body needs to be safe. And if the body has excess body fat to lose, it has to be safe. Cellular health has to be in a healthy place for your body to release excess weight. So doing that doesn't come from starvation. It comes from eating whole foods. Fill in the bag.
I would love to dive into the blood sugar side of things. do you have anything specific that you will talk to clients about when we talk about achieving healthy blood sugars and how that relates to pregnancy? I just put you on the spot, Erin. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking through it. I think where I was going with this, with blood sugar management, keeping blood sugar in consideration, I don't think that's just a topic for individuals that are like risk for pre-diabetic or have diabetes. I think it's something that everybody should kind of consider when they're filling their plate, because I think mismanaged blood sugar that creates a state of inflammation in the body. That's a state of unsafety. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love talking about blood sugar with everybody. Anybody that walks through my door, any clients that would be listening to this, Laura's gonna talk about protein, fiber, fat, and carbohydrates, the big four. And I talk a lot about how we eat. It's not necessarily always the what, but it's the how. And I think on an old podcast somewhere you talked about pizza, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I steal that example because if anybody knows me,
wall.
I love pizza. Yes, it's also hanging on my wall. But it's this idea of when we eat or we think of these bad foods and such in our diet-centric society, it's not often that the food is bad, it's missing something, or it's not healthful the way we're necessarily processing it in our body, right? So lonely carbohydrates or snacky McSnackster throughout the day where we don't actually eat like a meal. Oh, I say that word all the time.
Snacky McSnackster.
So if you're listening and you've ever felt this urge later in the afternoon, evening of like, Snacky McSnackster's coming out, right? That is a telltale sign that you have just not had enough protein or food earlier in the day. Mm-hmm. So start your day with breakfast. It doesn't have to be breakfast foods, but it needs to be something that's chock full of protein, fiber, which then helps manage that blood sugar or that carbohydrate digestion. Yeah. So an easy example is a Pop-Tart by itself versus a Pop-Tart, or maybe a half Pop-Tart, right? Depending on the individual. But a Pop-Tart with, 2 eggs scrambled with a little bit of cheese, and maybe some raspberries on the side. Yeah. All of a sudden, yes, it's a carbohydrate, but the way your body processes that quickly digesting carbohydrate is very different.
It's like you're dampening blood sugar spike.
You're slowing it down, and thus there's going to be less insulin floating around in the bloodstream, a little less of the inflammatory process, and then also we could use a different carbohydrate than Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
That was just
but that's how you eat Pop-Tarts, if you want to know.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's when I hear what you two are saying, it's insulin is an example, or blood sugar volatility is an example of something that's happening downstream as a result of meal patterning. Like I love how you said, right? It's the how, not the what. And it's such an important thing to think about when we come full circle and say we're recommending people focus on lifestyle changes. And so we're not saying don't waste your time thinking about nutrition when when you want to get pregnant, like genetics will decide if you can. No, there's a lot of good stuff you can do, but instead of coming in and saying, tell me what to eat, what's a fertility food? There's no such thing as a fertility food. There's a dietary baseline that optimizes your health and wellness. And if it's managing your insulin, that means it's patterning in a way. And so instead of being snacky McSnackster, which is, I'm now stealing that from you.
You're welcome.
We focus on really good quality meals that provide really good hormonal, blood sugar baseline, reduced volatility, good consistent energy, good consistent satiety. But what's funny is you start to think about that and go, oh, so what you're saying is instead of running out the door with a Pop-Tart, you want me to sit down and eat breakfast. And it's like, ooh, did your life just slow down? Did you just get less stressed? Did you just prioritize self? That's where the how, right? It's these lifestyle changes where if you start to live like the healthier you, living like the healthier you doesn't mean eating off a list of 20 foods. It means integrating foods. It means making more time for food. It means pairing foods properly. If you are starting to prioritize self and prioritize health, your body is going to do surprising things. I mean, how many clients can you guys think of that you have them like do a non-distracted lunch and they come back and they go, I don't snack when I get home anymore. And it's like, because your lunch was a break. You actually took a break. It's like, oh, that's what that's for. Like it's these little things, and I know all of you have had those
Snacky
celebrations.
McSnackster goes away.
He does.
It's wild.
Or she does in this case.
They do.
They do. There we go.
Well, I think it might be helpful also to just touch on like why are we even talking about blood sugars as it pertains to pregnancy? And I feel like one of the biggest things that we can really do to optimize fertility is especially if there is some low level insulin resistance, especially within the context of PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome. Polycystic ovary syndrome or PCOS is a syndrome that is also oftentimes coupled or characterized by that insulin resistance. And so that's your body's metabolism of glucose, right? So with that, we will sometimes see those elevated blood sugar levels. It's oftentimes in response to, you know, simple sugars, especially on an empty stomach with nothing to pair it with.
For sure.
And so, of course, we're definitely talking about most of your diet being these complex carbohydrates, getting a lot of that fiber and all that produce, all of those things. Sometimes it is helpful to also add a little bit of supplementation in there to help. That's where I always bring in the inositol. And this is something that I use almost across the board for people that are trying to become pregnant or actively pregnant. And inositol is a supplement that is naturally in your body. It's a sort of sugar that is in a lot of complex carbohydrates that can help increase your insulin sensitivity and help therefore reduce that insulin resistance, which can sometimes help with those cystic ovaries. And so what I like to recommend is, sorry, I'm just on my tangent about
Go for it,
blood
girl.
sugar and
Go off.
For those of you out there who are trying to maybe supplement with the inositol, I usually recommend a 40-to-1 ratio of Myo to D-chiroinositol. I usually recommend about 1 gram per day. There are a lot of good brands out there. I don't want to plug any one specific brand, but you can DM me and I'll let you know my favorites. But those are some of the things that we can use as tools in our toolbox to really help bolster ovulatory fertility, especially if we're dealing with some prediabetes or some insulin resistance or some PCOS. So there are really great things that you can do, but the biggest one is make sure you have a really good meal routine and make sure that that plate is really well balanced. That is probably the number one thing you could do before any of that supplementation or things.
It's back to that majoring in minor things you talked about, where it's like,
Mhm.
yes, inositol can be valuable, vitamin D can be valuable, omega-3s can be valuable, but how much of that could you be getting if you were actually eating properly? And insulin sensitivity from dietary change, from dietary patterning, versus insulin sensitivity from a chromium or a selenium or an inositol supplement is going to be, I mean, the percent change is going to be absolutely just out of this world. And so you got to focus on those big things. And it's not that these don't matter, but if you're putting all your energy into these little tweaks and you continue to not work on your stress management, not work on your exercise routine, not work on your eating patterning. That eating patterning is the thing that people come into our office and they're like, they get frustrated sometimes because they want to be a meal plan. Tell me what to eat. And it's like, no, we're going to work on how you eat. I need you to practice this pattern. And it's like we basically like put these training wheels on. Like I want you to eat this way repetitively to give your hormones a chance to stabilize, to give your appetite a chance to regulate. And people are like, you're doing the simple things. And it's like, well, that's because you aren't. Start with the simple stuff, get really effing good at it, and then sprinkle the cherry on top. But like, you got to bake the cake first.
And all this stuff is going to help you in pregnancy too, which we're going to dive in for our next series of this episode. But I think that's really important to know too, is like you're developing these habits and routines and they're really going to serve you during pregnancy too.
Absolutely. I think the better nutritionally adequate your diet and menu spread, or I guess meal spread through the day, the better you're going to feel during first trimester, second trimester. And obviously there are the outliers that really get hit with that first trimester hard. Thank God I wasn't one of them. But I think in terms of for people like takeaways, I think it's important too to say a few specific nutrition recommendations of saying, hey, consume these foods, make sure you're having these throughout the day. Do you want to start with any?
I'd say specific foods or like
types of foods.
Like a day in the life.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's fun. So a day in the life. So I, as a general rule for protein, I try to do like a palm to 2 palms per meal. I'm like a square 3 meal a day person.
Yeah.
So I'd say like a palm to 2 palm. And my protein choices, I like animal protein.
Yeah.
So chicken thigh, beef, I don't really go for pork, any kind of seafood. So I'm doing like a quarter of my plate. Let's do eggs. I love eggs. So 2 to 3 eggs.
Great source of choline. Very
Yes.
important micronutrient.
And B12,
And B12.
Yeah.
There you go.
So 2 to 3
And healthy
eggs,
fats.
depending on how
Mhm.
hungry I
And
am.
protein.
especially if they're organic and
Grass-fed.
free range.
Oh, yeah.
Free range.
I'm
Yes.
thinking
That is a
higher-
side note, right? This
Yeah.
is when you're thinking of beef, but free range eggs.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where the omega-3 content is like tripled, and so it's worth spending the extra $2 for those real orange yolks because they're going to give you way
100%.
more B12, way more choline, way more omega-3.
It's like a multivitamin.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, eggs. Where was I? Oh, 2 to 3 eggs. Do a piece of toast. I'm not. I kind of am a gluten light. I don't have a gluten intolerance or anything. I just like gluten-free breads and
Psychopath.
whatever.
Yeah, what?
I know. except for sourdough. So a piece of toast. And my fiber, I'll do like a handful of cherry tomatoes or peppers. Lunch. I'm a turkey sandwich girl, turkey wrap girl. So I'll do like a turkey wrap with like tons of arugula, hummus, carrots, string cheese. That'll be lunch. Snack.
Full fat dairy, huh?
Oh yes.
Oh,
Yes,
we can
full
touch
fat
on that
dairy.
too.
Yeah, we have to talk about fat. So I'm like a mid-afternoon snack type of person. And my current go-to, and I mean this has been true for years: plantains, a clementine, and almonds. And dinner, we're like meat and potatoes people. So I don't know.
I'm
Beef.
hearing a beautiful spread of my 4.
Yes.
Protein, fiber, fats, and carbohydrates.
Yes.
All at the same time.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Potatoes. Oh, meat and potatoes person. I really crave potatoes a lot during pregnancy. By the way, it's like my
Nice.
superfood. I think.
Good
But
source of iron,
yes.
There you
massive
go.
in iron,
Potassium.
some potassium
I must
in there,
have
a little
needed
bit of
it.
magnesium. You're
So-
definitely getting those macro micros, as they call them, the micronutrients you need the most of. Potatoes are actually very rich in them.
Yeah.
People always think of, like, they're always like, oh, I should be doing sweet potatoes. It's like there's more vitamin A, but there's less iron and there's less of the
Yeah.
other things. Like,
Go
I mean,
for the. Don't
it's
be
not
afraid
that
of the
sweet
white
potatoes. Yeah, they're not. People think they're like.
Started
no,
that
I have
because
no.
I'm
Probably the sweet
so-
potato people.
You know, their marketing is pretty
Foodspiracy.
big. Yeah.
Big
Big
Maybe.
sweet potato.
Let's cancel them.
They're gonna come
Just
for
kidding.
us
I
now.
love
Yeah.
sweet potato French fries. They're the best.
All potatoes matter.
That's true.
They sure do.
But no, so I mean, full fat dairy, I think something to be said is our society fears fat like crazy.
Right.
I
Especially
think
saturated fat. and dairy.
especially saturated in dairy. And,
Yeah.
you know, again, I can't remember exactly who, was it Ansel Keys?
Ansel Keys.
Ansel Keys.
Mhm.
So, I mean, his nutrition research came out, what, in the 80s?
50s.
Oh, Jesus, I'm wrong.
It's okay.
In the 50s, and it came out, let's fear fat, let's put the fear of God in all of our, you know,
Yeah.
individuals and go low fat everything.
We're still recovering from that.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
crazy. He did his research in the 50s and 60s, and he did research on cholesterol, but he was using the an LDL spectrometer, which there was only one of them in the United States at the time. So all of his research correlated LDL being elevated to heart disease risk, which is true, but to simplify it in his research papers, he called it cholesterol. And so all of his papers in the 1950s and 60s were not on total cholesterol, they were on total LDL, which is a very different conversation. And then guess who was on the board of the American Heart Association when they created the 1974 dietary guidelines? Him. And so all of the 1974 dietary guidelines for Americans, the first time we ever talked about standardizing nutrition, he was one of the founders, and his research was front and center. And so we embedded poorly done research that was heavily biased into our nutritional guidance. And to this day, there are a ton of physician groups and groups all over the world that still reference the 1974 guidelines. And we've done 12,000 studies on cholesterol and lipids since then. We have such a better understanding, and all of us understand that, but it's to say that it's been so demonized that it becomes that wrong information, just you can't escape it.
So you're
That's a whole other
saying,
podcast episode.
I was gonna say, so you're
Unlearn.
saying that we shouldn't be terrified of egg yolks and cheese?
No, we shouldn't.
Andrew, what?
Or fattier cuts of meat.
I know,
What?
I know, and the quality of it can absolutely matter, right? It's funny. I always like to joke. It's like if a cow eats its natural diet, it is appropriately lean, which means it has the right amount of fat, and the fat it has is a healthier type of fat. Just like us as humans, if we eat a really imbalanced diet, we get excess visceral fat in our abdomen, which is a less desirable fat. And so when you have a cow, for example, that eats grass, which is its normal diet, not only is there less fat on the cut of meat, there's more lauric acid, which is a medium chain triglyceride. So even though it's saturated, it's already broken in half, so it doesn't have the same inflammation processes, doesn't have the same digestibility issues. And so you start to see where it's like, oh, let's just like look at our sourcing a little bit and look at the quality of the food we're considering. But there's so much misinformation out there that, man, we could spend a whole other hour, so we probably have to be careful. But
full fat dairy, that's your takeaway.
So, because I know we're limited on time, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that want some more updated evidence-based nutrition information, do we want to share some of our favorite resources for such information?
They're all sitting right
They're
there.
sitting right there. I will
we'll
say.
pass them around. Each of you rep a book or two.
Okay, I'll take this one.
Take this one.
Should I start since it's fertility?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Real Food for Fertility by Lily Nichols. She is a registered dietitian. She is very well known in the prenatal nutrition community. She's wonderful, very evidence-based. She undoes a lot of old recommendations that are just, again, outdated and that we've been using for so many years and that aren't actually improving our fertility or pregnancy journeys. So wonderful read. She's got 2 books. This one's Real Food for Fertility, and it's a good one.
Good. Well, my favorite is The Fertility Diet. It's by Dr. Walter Willett, and he is the most quoted nutrition researcher in history, which is pretty amazing. He's still alive today. And so this is all very, it's not like super readable. It almost reads like a textbook, but it's really just like a summary of all of the research from the second iteration of the Nurses' Health Study. We know there's such a gap in women's health and research, especially as it pertains to fertility and pregnancy. And he really gleaned all of the information we could possibly glean from this second iteration of the Nurses' Health Study to find ways to boost ovulatory fertility. So I'm a big, big fan.
Ooh, yes, I'm going to read that next. I also have a Lily Nichols book. So this is Real Food for Pregnancy. That book just came out. It was not out.
Brand new.
It was not out when I was in my preconception phase. But I did read this, which I think we said this. The dietary advice and the guidelines in here sort of apply. Preconception, while you're carrying, postpartum. She really picks apart the research. Like it reads like a textbook, but I feel like anybody could read this as a practitioner. I'm like digging in, and the whole thing's highlighted. And I recommend this to anybody. In addition, kind of pick which one now that new one's out, but it's brilliant. The title says The Science and Wisdom for Optimal Prenatal Nutrition. She focuses a lot on like ancestral nutrition, she calls it. So she takes like a whole foods approach, like getting back to the basics. Like, let's not get in the weeds about the micronutrients. Let's eat whole foods because you're getting your protein and your fats, and also the micronutrients are covered from that too. So she's all about getting the most bang out of your buck. And she makes it so hopeful. It's
I didn't realistic too.
Yeah, like I didn't read this and think, oh my gosh, I have to do this and this and this and this. It was very, very applicable, I'll say. So
it sounds like it basically the core message we've had, which is basically trying to simplify things.
Yeah.
Instead of, like you said, buying 37 pills and having to create some crazy smoothie and watch when the sun's rising at its fullest. Like, all the crazy crap that's out there now. Yeah. It's like, hey, let's get back to core nutrition. How are you doing the core things well? Yeah. Main meals, food pairing, quality foods, and then allowing things to build on top of that based on individuals. And that's where there is a place for supplements. And there are special cases like those with PCOS and endometriosis that are going to have resistance. And there are genetic issues that can be barriers. And there are things that nutrition can do to support that. It's not going to fix any of those things, but we can definitely make adjustments. But until you have that baseline eating, good meal patterns, good food pairing, good quality of food, good variety, all the rest of it's kind of irrelevant is really what we were trying to say. And it sounds like that's kind of where that goes too, is once you focus, and that's what's funny is when you focus on the big thing, it ends up taking up 90% of the pie chart anyway. And so by then your supplement list is so much teenier because you're getting so much more omega-3, you're getting so many more of the vitamins and minerals and micronutrients that did exist in food and always have existed in food. And I don't know why we forgot that somewhere along the way, probably stress and convenience.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I know we only have like a minute left, but
any final wisdoms?
I would say don't listen to all of the fear mongering on the internet. Let's get back to basics. Do those really well, like you said. And then we can kind of sprinkle in the helpful little additions at the top of that pyramid. But it doesn't have to be overly complex. We can keep it simple. Healthy eating does not have to take hours and hours of time. Keep it simple. And again, also watch who you're watching on the internet.
Well said. If they're spending all this time telling you exactly what you should eat,
if they're in a grocery store, don't watch their videos. That's just straight up.
Especially if they're shirtless in a grocery store.
If they're like, this is what I eat in a day. Please don't do that.
Yeah. Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, specific.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you guys all pump out a lot of good perinatal stuff, and across our group, we're always working in this population. So that's the other thing.
More coming up soon too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. More to come, right? And
Yeah.
I do think that, even when I just think about like what my role is when I work with a client that's trying, a lot of times it's to give them peace of mind. They come into my office scrambled and chaotic and grasping at straws, trying to figure out what to do. And sometimes it's helping them understand that less is more, and let's focus on doing a couple things really well. And so I hope that, just like we hope to give the exhale, to clients, I hope that, this podcast can serve as that, right? And if you do need someone in your corner, that's what us RDs are for. So don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll help you optimize, but we're not going to make you obsess.
Well, next we have to talk about male fertility in the next podcast because we didn't get it to it today.
We'll start at conception, so to speak, which is
that's perfect.
I love it. Well, thank you too for taking the time, and we'll make sure to round robin and come back to this for a part 2. And everyone listening, if you have specific questions or areas of interest, please message us, comment, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Maybe we'll do a little Q&A if we get some good questions next time.
Nice.
Love
That'd
it.
be great. Awesome.
Good.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Good stuff.